Good afternoon, folks. We don't have any slides to show. It's more of a story, so if you want to see us, you might want to move over to the two-thirds that aren't occupied. If you don't want to see us, you can stay there. That's totally fine. We won't be offended.
And I was thinking that this would make a great give and take where I'll talk about what I do at the facility and then open things up to questions as well in case you're curious about workflows and technology.
So as a brief introduction, my name is Jonathan Solomon. I'm a Strategics Initiative Engineer with Aspera. If you're not familiar with Aspera, Aspera is a high-speed file transfer solution for both file-based and streaming-based assets. We're acquired by IBM in 2014, so we're technically an IBM company now. Just don't hold that against us. I'll let Scott introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Scott Ettin, and I work at a facility in Greenwich Village called Technicolor-Postworks, and I am the head of our data department, as well as working with a colleague of mine in our digital media services. And I think we were going to discuss 4K to 8K workflows, file management, and sort of how to handle the overwhelming volume of media that a lot of directors and filmmakers are creating.
Do you want to tell everybody what Postworks does in general?
Sure. Postworks is a full-service post-production facility. We work with independent filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, as well as A-list directors and film studios, and as well as television studios. And we receive file-based media, 60 millimeter and 35 millimeter film. So we have film processing through a new lab, the Kodak lab in Long Island City, and then we scan to either 2K DPX 10-bit resolution with Spirit Data Cine, or with RA Scanner we can go to 4K 16-bit for archival work and restoration work. And we have full service for editorial in HD, 2K, 4K, as well as color grading through either the Avid platform, Baselight, or DaVinci Resolve. Several Aspera servers for pushing dailies content back and forth. And a lot of StoryNext SAN volumes for dailies workflows and archival work, and a quantum infrastructure for data archiving.
So, 4K, 8K workflows, how to handle it, how to do it. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure sort of the experience and the interest that you have with the work that you do, but quite often we have a very, very heavy load of episodic television dailies for HBO, Showtime, Fox. Like, we've worked on all 6 seasons of The Americans. We've worked on a lot of shows for HBO. Some, first time, like season 1 of a variety of shows, as well as second and third seasons. And one of the overriding themes that we've discovered and have been experiencing is not just a steady growth, but somewhat exponential growth in the data footprint with which people are shooting, whether it's film or the new file-based camera systems. One director for a feature who shot last fall in Harlem, he was working on an adaptation of a James Baldwin novel. They shot with an RA RAW camera in 3.2K, but at 16-bit resolution. And we started receiving dailies that were averaging 8 terabytes in size every day. And very, very quickly that exploded to 12 and 15 terabytes per day. And they were shooting everything down to I don't know if you're familiar with the codecs system, where you can shoot at the maximum resolution of your file-based camera in the raw format, and then write that data to large solid-state sleds. And then the DIT at the end of the shoot day would bring us those sleds, and we'd have the trays, and we could load them and then copy the data off. And this feature was pushing the facility right to the edge in terms of receiving the media and processing the dailies, and then offloading that to nearline storage so that they could cut the film as they shot, as well as the responsibility on us to archive all that media to LTO for both the studio to make several copies, as well as internal archives that we would keep just in case the client had an issue where their storage crashed or they lost something that we could, at the jump of a hat, sort of restore a clip, a scene, an entire camera roll, you name it.
So you're getting in all this content, and you're getting in terabytes and terabytes a day, and that's just one shoot that was going on. Presumably there were other shoots going on. And in some cases, they're going to post it in-house.
Yep.
And in some cases, they're going to archive it and take it somewhere else. Let's talk about how you handle a little bit about maybe approvals or distribution type of stuff.
Sure.
We're going to skip post a little bit, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But handle some of that, it's not a post crowd. Handle some of the distribution side of it.
The distribution side of it, we very heavily relied on Aspera. We were running and have been running a fastback server since the early days in 2006, and as demands on us have increased, we've increased the power and storage capabilities of our server. And for this, as an example, this movie that was shot last fall, editorial was off-site in one of our sort of sister facilities where they had editorial rooms, Avid platform. And we would, as part of the dailies deliverables for editorial, create Avid DNX, either 36 or maybe 115. And then we would, from our machine room, pipe the data via Aspera to a work group for everybody in editorial as well as project management. And I configured the Aspera cargo application on the editorial workstations so that automatically in the middle of the night, before the editors walk into their room, all the dailies media, EDL, sound files, and so forth have all downloaded and populated to their ISIS storage so that when they walk in, they can just pick up where they left off and continue editing. And occasionally there might be, a file they want redone, or, there was a glitch with something that the DIT did, so we would, grab the files and push it through again. But it made for very consistent, smooth workflow that put the editorial group in a very comfortable position so they can keep up, and the director can basically have his dailies the next day and review how the shoot's going.
So you're getting all this content in at very high resolution. And then you're transcoding it down to a proxy. Yeah, effectively, even though it's a 2K proxy, right?
Yeah, we're using the on-set dailies by Colorfront as our main dailies pipeline. So we can basically take in any file-based camera format down to, from DPX scans to Red and ARRI and Sony Cine Alta, you name it. Load that, apply a LUT, either supplied by the DIT or something agreed to with the director and the colorist before production began, process the footage, and then pipe that out to editorial securely through Aspera to the editorial suite. And that is just one of probably a dozen projects that are going concurrently through multiple OSD systems. And if it's episodic for a series like, say, UKS on Netflix, they're shooting, so they're cross-boarding episodes, and we're processing both. And as soon as an episode is done shooting, our editorial team and our color team is already prepping that episode while dailies for the next set are coming in. So we're constantly doing the turnover, creating deliverables, screeners, as well as dailies media for the editorial team.
So the dailies, you have to actually do the 2Ks down, or it's really, you can't edit with the 8K, 4Ks today. Is that correct? It's too cumbersome?
Too cumbersome for any editorial platform.
Right. So you bring them down to 2K, you post them wherever they post them, and then would they send you back to EDL?
Yeah, when it comes time for a final conform, once they've gone through dailies and they've either have a lock of the picture for final conform or a particular television episode, from that EDL, we can then selectively restore, actually either from the tape archive we've generated, or if the client's paying for from the nearline storage we've set up for them, pull back the original media, camera media at resolution, and conform for a final 4K deliverable or higher from that.
Is that automated?
It's automated in the sense that if we get the EDL, then we have scripts where we can load that and restore that just by pushing a button. Other times it's editor generating basically an EDL for us when the client's in the room, because they'll review what they have and decide to make editorial and or color changes. Especially our favorite part is when an episode or a feature is locked and then somebody changes their mind and we have to unlock it and go back to a certain scene, restore more media that we've already deleted from nearline because everything was blessed. And there's a lot of that.
So let's talk about the storage hierarchy for a minute. Right? Obviously, you have an HSM going on there where you've got stuff coming in off of disk, sleds, purely file-based, and you've got that as your sort of online, and then all the way down to your tape on a shelf. So can you talk about some of that whole, not just the HSM, but the whole workflow and how you take stuff on and off?
Well, depending on the client expectation, and I guess in the end what they're paying for, we will either set up nearline storage as well as with sort of tape archives at the ready. We'll keep everything, all the raw camera footage online so that at the drop of a hat the media can be pulled and brought into session, or a down convert can be made to send off to the client if they need to review a particular scene. Otherwise, we will receive media that will be Aspera to us, either from other facilities or the studio back in California, if that's the way during dailies they wanted things done, where we archive it, ship it out, and then they want it for content security reasons to clear that from our storage system. And sort of any variant in between to something is, somebody has something on a WeTransfer and it's a small clip and they want us to grab it, pull it down, and integrate it into the workflow. But we're constantly using cloud-based local storage, tape archive, or just if the DIT has kept all the cards or all the hard drives from the shoot, pulling everything back, as well as turning things around and pushing everything right back out, either to drive or back into a cloud setup, via Google, Amazon, or through our Aspera servers.
So you mentioned the cloud, Google, Amazon, and so forth. Are you starting to see more of your clientele go into the cloud for either long-term storage, archiving, or other purposes?
For the long-term storage, that's just beginning to happen now. We do a lot of work with Netflix, and they have a very impressive Aspera setup in terms of the way that, whether it's the content hub or their backlot, depending on the assets they need. And more they want to sort of go through a neutral sort of cloud setup. We're beginning to experiment with Amazon Snowball to move the dailies media to a Snowball device and then send that off to Netflix, as well as to continue sort of piping things directly through their Aspera gateway. Some of the sort of more independent or sort of local television studios, or not local, but just sort of the Showtimes, the HBOs, and so forth, they're very, very concerned about content security. And they're exposed to the cloud, they know about the cloud, but they prefer things to be on tape or piped to their Aspera setup with their own internal infrastructure, because they feel, and I understand the sense of a hands-on control to make sure their media is secure and rightly so.
So we've gone through the process of acquisition of the content, getting it in, and managing that through storage. We've talked a little bit about how you do some editing. And then once you have a lock and everything is conformed, what's the next step for the content?
If everything is locked and conformed, it's a matter of making deliverables, lots and lots of deliverables. And Netflix will have a graded Air Master, video delivery master that's not color corrected. It's like NAMs, GAMs. I think there's even an MAM, which I can't remember what it stands for. And that causes our storage platforms to just burst because we have so many deliverables at 2K or 4K, HD, HDSR, or EXR formats. And it's something that's at feature length. We're looking at 4.85 terabytes for one texted version and then the textless version. And then all of that is created, pushed through secure transfer, usually Aspera. That's very, very popular and very well liked. At times Signiant, but mostly Aspera. And then once all of that's been delivered, it's incumbent upon us for our clients to then archive all of that LTO7, LTFS, and if we have to make 100 tapes, we make 100 tapes, and everything is verified and secure and tucked away, and it's in a lockdown area in our traffic and library, so that should anything happen, we have a backup for them. And it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of hours, and I've definitely been working a lot of weekends since last fall, staying on top of that.
Now, you mentioned Signiant and Aspera. That's totally fine. This is about content delivery. So you're delivering this content through those two. Would you use anything else for content delivery? I'm setting you up on this.
No, it's okay. I would say it's 98, 99% Aspera. I only mention Signet because every so often there's an outlier, but we don't prefer the platform.
So well, where I'm going with that is you're not using FTP or SCP.
No,
so
we
to
stopped,
state the obvious, go ahead.
we stopped using secure FTP, let alone secure FTP years ago, in part because the speed performance is terrible. It's not efficient in the way it uses the TCP/IP stack, and also just the security is not there. And Aspera, often more than anything else, is incredibly fast and robust and very, very secure. And it's become an industry standard among television broadcasters, studios, and feature film studios. It's just the preferred platform.
So the point of that was, of course, security, whether you're using Aspera, we love that, or a competitor. Nobody wants to get these deliverables anymore or be on the hook for delivering them outside of a secure platform.
Correct. It's very, very rare that we would just put things on a hard drive, even a hard drive that's passcode protected, and then FedEx it. Because even if your drive is properly packed, you don't know how the shipping company is going to treat the drive. It probably is going to be tossing the box. Only if someone has 5 or 10 terabytes of data and they just wanted to get from Greenwich Village up to Midtown, okay, if we get a Thunderbolt 3 drive and it's a RAID, maybe we can just squeeze that on a drive and send it uptown with all the caveats. But otherwise, any other formal delivery is all through Aspera over high-speed encrypted networks. We comply with MPA content security guidelines, and we've had security audits from all of the studios and passed with flying colors, and it's just the preferred platform.
So I'll do one more question with you, and then we'll open up to the floor.
Sure.
You've talked a lot about storage and transfer. Is your role more in the sense of storage? Does your role revolve around storage more than anything else?
It's between storage and then, because I manage our Aspera FastSpecs, which is the web-based platform, and our point-to-point servers, it's 70-30, 70 storage, 30% managing the Aspera. I mean, by and large, the Aspera servers, both FastSpecs and point-to-point, they just run. I can poke in every so often and just take a look to make sure things are humming along and just make sure I've got storage locally. But by and large, it's just the uptime is such that maybe once a month, if there's been heavy traffic, I give the server a little tickle and reboot it. We worked on the HBO series Succession, when I can talk about that because the trailers are out and it's coming to air shortly. And the last month of production was in Wales, and it was a film shoot, 35 millimeter, and a lab in London was scanning 2K and generating 2.5 to 3 terabytes of DPX files a day, and they would pipe that to us in, say, 250 to 300 gig packages, and it was just rolling around the clock, 6 days a week, and we just had a nice, beautiful workflow set up, and the server handled the load. Our team was ready to pull things down and prep things to sand for dailies, and then off for archiving. And the platform worked flawlessly. It was terrific.
Well, thanks for the plug. Well, my point on that was not just that Aspera is fantastic and works great, but we're seeing more and more where people think of file transfer as an IT role in IT, delivery as a role in IT. We're seeing that more and more fall on the storage side because the storage people know how much needs to be moved and understand that it takes time to move that, whereas typically IT groups don't really get that. They want to make sure the phones work and that the green lights blink, but they don't understand the timing versus the storage. So was there anything else you wanted to add before we open it up to questions?
No, not at all.
Do we have any questions on the floor? Yes, sir.
Yes, I think as someone here today who's a lot closer to the content probably than most of the people here who are like architecting CDNs and stuff like that, that was really cool. So thanks for coming and sharing that.
Sure.
Really, really cool stuff. I'm trying to like figure out through context clues like how exactly Aspera does what it does. Can you give like a super high level, super quick? I'm sure I'm probably the idiot who doesn't know what it is, but can you kind of explain what that is at a high level?
Yes, the question was, can we explain what Aspera is at a high level? I'll tell you, we have a lunch and learn tomorrow where I'll go into depth. and I don't want to make this too much of a sales pitch, but effectively, Aspera is not accelerated transfer, it's high-speed transfer. And the difference is that accelerated transfer does things to the data to perceive that it moves faster. What Aspera does is it moves the data at the highest available bandwidth, highest available bit rate, relative to the other traffic on the network. It does it using the UDP channel, but it is a proprietary FASP FASP protocol. And it does it by basically the secret sauce beyond what I can't talk about in the patent is we do NACs, right? So we send all the data, but because it's a client-server model, we know what we're expecting. And as bits don't get there, we go, hey, resend that packet, and we do. But we're able to do that at very, very high speed. We're showing 100 gigabit per second, and what I like to use is the term good put. So throughput is the amount of bits going through a pipe, right? Good put is the amount of fresh bits going through a pipe, non-redundant data. And our good put is 100% available bandwidth minus packet loss. So on a 1 gig network with 10% packet loss, you have a good put or an effective rate of 900 megabits per second. So you're sending 900 megabits every second of new data. That's a high level.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Go ahead, sir.
These days, you mentioned the Wales. Is it a TV show or a movie?
It's a television series. It'll air, I think, next month on HBO.
Does that happen often when they still do 35 mil? If I was understanding correctly.
Yeah, it was 35.
And
Yeah, and we've seen a huge uptick since the fall of last year, and we were a bit surprised by it. And the movie A Quiet Place with Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, that was shot 35. The film was processed at a lab in Long Island City, and that film came to our facility, and we did all the scanning. And it was a lot. And you start scanning 25,000 feet of film to 2K DPX at 10-bit resolution, and you start filling up your storage very, very fast. But there's just this love of film it's a resurgence, and now that this lab opened up in Queens, DPs know that if they're doing something in New York, they can go there, and we're here to do their scanning.
it's all about the look of film and the contrast ratio.
Right, and you just basically, you can have that, and you can have that aesthetic, and then take it into a DI, which is what has to happen. It's a digital intermediate. And we can do a clean flat pass, and then in grading pull everything out, and we'll keep the scans at 2K for quick turn and editorial, and then when it's time for a conform, then you go back, scan at 4K to then do the final deliverable.
Does the film negative ever get cut?
No, I mean, outside of just the reels themselves, I mean, just at the times where you have a film reel, but in terms of does that film reel that you shot ever get spliced up? No, that all happens digitally. You scan the entire thing, you bring in the entire lab roll, and then on your editing or color platform of choice, you digitally cut. And then when it's time to conform, you create an EDL just to pull selects back from each lab roll to build the finished piece.
That'll be a fun dinner discussion later. Any other questions?
You were mentioning the transmission rate is 1 gig, 1 gigabit per second. Is that the standard what typically people like yourselves use for the transmission rate?
Well, our facility, we have the capability to send out up to 10 gigabits per second. The application of our Aspera, the web portion for our clients, we found that to push editorial media up to even 2K and 4K ProRes QuickTimes, the data footprint doesn't require that, only because our clients themselves are limited to 100 to 300 megabit per second speeds. Even editorial clients, if they're on their own location that their studio's provided for them, oftentimes they're locked down to like 100 megabits at best. So we're getting good put of 99% of that. I mean, if we're serving them, depending on the setup, we're giving them 300 megabits, but the studio's only giving them 100. Well, they're getting 90, 99, depending on traffic. Or in the particular instance is the performance of their storage, what we're downloading to. And we could have 10 gigabits, and they can have 10 gigabits, but if their ISIS or Unity mount isn't high performance enough, then that's it. That's as fast as they're going to go.
And that's the key with any transfer that can do high speed is you have your ISP cap, which is your big one, right? But you can always expand that. And then typically the second cap beyond that is in fact storage, and it's the write storage, right? Read speeds are always a lot faster. And then beyond the write, if you don't have a problem with write storage, typically it's a machine limitation. Someone's spun up a VM that's really tiny, and so that makes it a limitation. But those are your three limitations on transfer speed. Otherwise, if you have theoretically unlimited storage write speed and unlimited compute and unlimited network connectivity, you can move it at unlimited rate.
So are you finding that there's a real uptake to maybe wanting to make that better? Since it sounds like a real bottleneck there.
Yeah, so the follow-up question was improving speeds overall. Yeah, so Scott's on the low end these days. I've been with the company about 4.5 years, and when I started, 1 gigs were very, very common. 10 gigs were rare because it was very costly and it was hard to justify that cost. That slope has really ramped up. 10 gigs are as cheap as 1 gigs were 5 years ago. So we have lots of customers that have multi-10 gig instances, 20, 40 gigs of ISP throughput, sometimes redundant.
Nice.
And some of those customers have multi-10 gig licenses, 20 gig licenses. I can name 3 customers that are today moving 10 gigabits per second because they're archiving to the cloud. So they have a big project and they're doing that. So we are seeing an uptick. The other side of that is if Scott had physically more space in his building to put physically more storage and physically serve more customers, he would need to physically improve that pipe size because he's already filling up as what he has today with 1 gig. So any improvements he would need.
Yeah, and that's under discussion too. Yeah, go ahead.
Scott, real quickly, what's the write speed of your ISIS?
Oh, let's see. I don't know how many megabytes per second, but it's got to be enough, obviously, to keep up with HD to 2K editorial media. Oftentimes, when we're delivering the dailies to our client in a standard ISIS configuration, that's landing in the middle of the night when nobody's on and nobody's cutting. We have seen bottlenecks at times when someone comes in early, where somebody's starting to work, yet cargo on one of their associate systems is fired up and it's downloading dailies, and all of a sudden their download rate drops. And then we get calls and say, hey, why is this taking so long? And if I will get on the phone with them and I'll team viewer right over to their station, and I can see right off the bat that cargo is running. So I tell them that you have this conflict where the storage is trying to keep up with a 300 megabit per second download while you're trying to edit. We can either slow this down, I show them that they can lower the speed, or I say stop editing. And I said just watch in a matter of like a minute how quick this is going to speed up. And they freeze and they stop editing. And all of a sudden the download speed, the speed just climbs very quickly. So I would say, look, if you can just wait 20 minutes, dailies are done, and now you can resume and you can edit to your heart's content without any conflict. One thing I wanted to share with you was there was a shoot that took place in upstate New York last fall, and they were shooting ARRI, but it was ProRes Quad 4. And what we would do at the end of their shoot day is that the DIT would come into this house they rented and plug in the drive to a tripped out Mac Pro system, and they had Verizon like business class, and I think 100 megabits up and down. We would remote in, and we would load their footage to process dailies, proxy QuickTimes, log into our Aspera server, send it back to ourselves to get it off for dailies editorial, and then log back in and then push the camera masters back to us, pull that down for archiving. And it was a system that oftentimes a lot of clients really appreciate because they don't have to worry about all of that. We'll jump in and use editorial tools, just encoding tools to make proxies, and then take advantage of Aspera to bring everything back to the facility to basically be ahead of the client expectation as to when they can receive their dailies. And comfort in knowing that everything's being archived as well.
We getting the cane? Getting the hook? All right.
Okay.
Any last questions? All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Enjoy it. Thank you very much.